Today's guest used to enforce the law and wear a badge, but now Phyllis Pruden is a real estate and accounting executive enforcing a one-day close.
So when you write reports, police reports, they're very factual, they're very chronological, and you're telling a story, but in a very concise way. And it's geared so that, a jury of your peers can understand what you're saying.
Hello and welcome to the Lease Alert, where we have conversations with the smartest, most interesting people at the intersection of real estate, leasing, and accounting. I'm your host, Matt Waters. Let's learn something together. Today, it is my pleasure to have Phyllis Pruden on. Phyllis is a longtime member of the NRTA, and she leads a huge organization at a huge company, and it involves both real estate and accounting. And so, of course, Phyllis is right in the sweet spot of what we talk about on this podcast. So I'm excited to talk with her today. Phyllis, welcome to the Lease Alert Podcast.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. So first up, tell us about where you work and what your role involves there.
Perfect. I work at Oracle, and I lead our lease administration team. We manage a large portfolio of both real estate assets and data center assets, spanning just over 90 countries. So there's never a dull moment. And I would like to say our role involves give it to lease admin and they'll figure it out. I mean, I think we all know that story. And for real estate, we handle everything from the initial lease setup until really the day that lease terminates, and sometimes beyond, following up, getting security deposits and stuff. It's what we call cradle to grave lease administration. So onboarding, modifications, renewals, terminations. We do all the payments globally from our system and interface them to accounts payable, the billing and receivables for subtenants, and of course, the lease accounting schedules. And then we interface the monthly journal entries to our GL. So on the data center side, our focus, though, is more on the accounting side. We still do some lease management, but the business runs a lot of their lease management. But the accounting is more complex in nature for data centers than it is for real estate. So we work extremely closely with our controllers and technical accounting teams to ensure that, everything aligns with the accounting standards, our lease accounting policy, to make sure we're supporting, accurate financial statements, disclosures, and our global infrastructure. It's a big job, but it's very rewarding and we're never bored.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. That's a lot. I mean, you just summarized quite a bit there in about a minute, right?
Hmm.
I want to dig in a little bit. You mentioned 90 countries. So I'm assuming that you have dual reporting, like for lease accounting, you're almost always following ASC 842, I'm guessing. And then sometimes you're needing to follow IFRS 16. Is that correct?
That's correct. So on our primary ledgers are GAAP, and then our secondary ledgers for IFRS countries do the IFRS reporting.
Yeah.
And so we'll send both of those across each month. We'll send the GAAP ledgers and then the secondary ledgers as well.
Wow. Yeah. I know that is complicated in and of itself. First season, we had Tim Colber from Deloitte on, and Tim, I don't remember if he said this on the podcast or not, but a lot of times he'll refer to himself as bilingual. And what he means by that is it's US GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles. In lease accounting, that means ASC 842, of course, and then he has IFRS knowledge as well. So he says he's bilingual, and it really is. They're similar, but they are different. So I know
They are
that adds complexity. So you have people in different countries around the world that actually report to you, right?
No, we're all based in the US, actually. We're all based in the US, and then we work closely where we need local support, maybe language support or communication support with our facilities teams. They'll help us out, but my team is all located in the United States.
Wow. And so how many lease accountants and lease administrators do you have on your team?
Right now, I have 11. I'm filling a couple positions, so end game will be about 13. So we're divided, real estate and data centers. So my team's organized so that I have team leads on basically each major region, and then the lease administrators. On the real estate side, we handle it by region. On the data center side, we tend to handle everything by supplier. Just the nature of it makes it a little bit easier because of how the contracts are written.
Yeah. Wow. 13 people total with a few open positions. Yeah. By the way, shameless plug for the profession, right? Lease accounting and lease administration. There are always open positions. Now tell me a little bit. I know that Oracle is famous for having a one-day close. So,
Yes.
tell me a little bit about that. How do you possibly close the books in one day in 90 countries with a, 11-person team right now?
Well, remember, one day is 24 hours. Really, the way we do it is our technology, right? Our back-end solutions. It's the teams and it's the technology. And that's what Oracle tells its customers. That's what Oracle sells its customers. And, we drink our own champagne here at Oracle. And so we want to show our customers it can be done. You too can close your books in one day. It takes a coordinated effort. We have tight close practices and we have good applications. We have a lot of integrations that allow us to do that. And right now we go to market pretty much faster than most companies our size out there with our earnings reports and et cetera. So yeah, it is amazing. Everyone says, how do you do it? It's a coordinated effort. It's some long hours, but
Mhm.
everybody does long hours at quarter end. We just put our emphasis, a little bit differently and have done some automations that really, help us achieve that.
Yeah. I worked at American Tower for about 4 years and was on the lease accounting team there. Of course, we had hundreds of thousands of cell phone towers, leased,
Mhm.
and
So
we
you're
used to
familiar with Oracle.
yeah.
Yeah, yes,
Yeah, quite familiar. Done
yeah.
my fair share of approving journal entries and account reconciliations and all that good stuff in Oracle. Now, we did not have a one-day close. When I moved on from American Tower, we were in the process of upgrading the ERP system, to the latest version of Oracle. And so who knows? Maybe they are closer to one day now.
Maybe, yeah,
Yeah,
because you were on legacy, like ERP, and they've moved to Fusion now?
yeah,
Yeah, mhm,
yeah, yeah. So, oh, cool. I'm glad to hear you're practicing what you preach with that one day close.
yeah,
And hey, I guess even if it is a bad, long hours one day, at least you get it over with, right?
get it right? Yep, get it over with. Yep.
Let me shift gears here for a minute and go way back. You
Mhm,
didn't always work with leases. You actually
mhm,
started your career in a vastly different area, right? So,
I did.
tell us a little bit about that.
Sure, so I started off my career in law enforcement, and I was a police officer for nearly 13 years. I knew when I was young in high school, that's what I wanted to do. So I, started off as actually a police dispatcher at 19 years old. And while I was working graveyard shift as a dispatcher, I was going to the community college doing reserve police officer classes and working on my administration of justice degree. And the same department that I worked at as a dispatcher hired me pretty much 3 weeks after I turned 21, put me through the police academy, and then I was off and running, and I kinda look back at my 21-year-old self, and I'm like, "Man, how did people take me seriously back then?" But they did, and I loved that career, and then I moved over to a different agency, a larger agency, a few years into my career. But, life changes happen, and I had my first daughter, and then 20 months later had twin daughters,
Wow.
and so that really changes the dynamic, and one of my daughters had some medical issues, and it just became overwhelming doing the shift work, having to go to court, so I'm like, "I need a different job. I need to do something different," and so I decided to start looking at real estate, and I looked at residential real estate, and that really was not exciting for me, and so then I started looking at commercial real estate. I'm like, "Okay, that's more my speed." I mean, I'd always worked in back in the 90s when I started in law enforcement, it was a very male dominated field. That was really my comfort zone. And when you push forward, to the early mid 2000s, commercial real estate was really no different. And I just kind of fit really right into that mold. And I did that for a few years and then decided I need health benefits, this brokerage stuff, So I made the jump from commercial real estate over into corporate real estate. And I've been with Oracle now. Everybody's going to be doing the math on my age. I've been at Oracle now, be 18 years in February.
Mhm.
So, yeah, in
Wa
the same group. Yeah.
Wow. I wanna ask you a few questions about that story because that is very interesting. First, what did you learn as a police officer that you feel like you still apply to your job today?
It's funny you say that. Report writing is one, and
Mm,
conflict resolution, both of those. So when you
yeah.
write reports, police reports, they're very factual, they're very chronological, and you're telling a story, but in a very concise way. And it's geared so that, a jury of your peers can understand what you're saying.
Mm,
So even today, all these years later, I still write my emails, my reports, just like I would a police report. logical, kind of bullet points, factual, and chronological. So, I mean, that's kind of the joke around my team is I write everything like a police report. And then obviously conflict resolution, right? You deal with a lot of conflict in law enforcement and you try and resolve that verbally.
Mhm.
And so I learned a ton of conflict resolution skills when I was in law enforcement, and that applies in negotiations. That applies with upset, maybe landlords or tenants, and, being able to diffuse those situations. And so I'd say those are very translatable skills between one profession to the other.
Yeah. Wow, that's cool. You mentioned that your team is responsible for lease administration and lease accounting,
Mhm.
and you started out as a police officer, but then you moved into the real estate and then lease administration. Well, quick sidebar here. I also have an older son, and then we had twins, I guess about 20 months later as well. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, and ours are all boys, but we joke with the older one. We're like, hey, you're lucky that you came first because if the twins had come first, we
You would
might
have
just
never
have
been.
two kids.
Said the same thing. That is so funny. Yes.
I refer to that time in my life as a blur. There was so much going on that I don't remember vast portions of it. It's just like we were just busy. It's tough to have 2 babies that can't support their heads yet and to feed them a bottle at the same time, right? It's like
Right.
it's like juggling or something, right? Going back to the question, you're a police officer, then you're in real estate brokerage, and then real estate at, Oracle, primarily lease administration. When did you start to add in the accounting, and what has that looked like for you? How did you learn about accounting? Because you did not have an accounting degree.
Did not have an accounting degree. No. So, started learning about it as we actually started testing the property manager application, right? They had the patch so that we could become ASC 842 compliant. So started doing the testing. I really go back and credit my knowledge and my understanding to a mentor that I had at Oracle. His name is Hitton, and he works on our technical accounting group. And he was just very instrumental in those early stages of just walking me through everything, explaining it. So it was really on the job training for me. Now, I've gone back to school since then to get my accounting degree, and I'm almost done. So
Oh,
everything
cool.
just because I think that's something we should do since we're in charge of the accounting. But I really credit it to Hit, and it was really on the job training and just kind of learning it and picking it up. And I feel like I can pick up the concept. So it was just kind of understanding what it was and learning it as you go. And we're still learning. Every day you're learning. I feel like some days we're fitting a square peg in a round hole with a
Mhm.
lot of these contracts as they come through. But that's really the transition. So we adopted in June of 2019 is when Oracle adopted ASC 842.
Mhm. I mentioned up front that you've been involved with the NRTA. Can you tell me a little bit about how the NRTA or other groups have played into your learning?
Absolutely. So NRTA is a fantastic resource for lease administration. I mean, there is none, I think, other than NRTA. And there's really not a lot of training solutions out there for lease administrators. Who grows up, in high school says, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" "I want to be a lease administrator." Like, no one even really knows what that is. Everyone just kind of happens into the role, and it means something different at every company, it seems, as well.
Hmm.
So the NRTA has been fantastic with all the different curriculums and tracks, and I was really excited. One of my reasons I wanted to get involved with NRTA, I think it's been close to 10 years, is to help with the office side because it had been primarily retail focused for so long, but there was a big need to support the real estate lease administrators who do maybe office, industrial. Now you're tapping into data center lease administration. There's medical lease administration. So it's really covering all of those bases. So that was, my push to get involved in the NRTA so I could help with the office track, where I could. I love the NRTA for that reason.
Yeah, I agree. Me too. And matter of fact, I'll give a spoiler, I guess. I've been talking closely with Lisa Krizik, who's the executive director of the NRTA. And of course, they're big into planning for the annual conference this year. It's in the fall, it's in Orlando. It's going to be fun. I'm leading a 5K on Monday morning at the conference. So if anybody's interested in running, make sure you bring your running shoes
Okay.
to the conference. And also, here's the spoiler. I'm going to have a panel of people who have been on the podcast. Actually, we're having Tim Colber from Deloitte, and Phyllis is going to be there. And we're going to talk about career opportunities in lease accounting and lease administration and intersection of those two departments that, as we know now, Phyllis, really plays out beautifully in your career and in the careers of your team members. And it's a trend we're seeing really worldwide, this intersection of real estate, leasing, and accounting. And so that session at the NRTA conference, I think, is going to be a lot of fun and give people some interesting information about the latest trends in our careers, right?
Right.
So I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, I am too. And you talk about the intersection of like lease accounting and lease administration, and it's just such a natural intersection because I know companies are feeling this out as they've started adopting since 2019. Everyone's on a little bit of a different schedule, whether you're public or private, but some have it very divided. Like they have their controllers doing it or their finance teams doing it, and then they have lease administration. But everything's really predicated on correctly abstracting that lease and understanding your payment schedule and what are your lease components? And so it really makes sense that that whole process starts with lease administration and that lease administration really understand the accounting standard because everything's predicated on how you put that lease into your system.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Speaking of leases and getting those leases abstracted, I know I've seen in my career that in many cases, every lease is different, right? And
Mm.
I would like to hear, in your experience, can you tell us about a few of the most interesting leases that you've run across?
Sure. So obviously on the real estate side, like you say, they're all different. I'm sure we're like many other countries. You're negotiating from the landlord's form, right? Because they have a set form for their business because it works well with their financial system to, handle building budgets. And so there's always a lot of differences and stuff there. But I really have to say, it's just been surprising on the data center side how much it's changed. And some of the interesting things I can't wait to come across my desk and kind of what I've already seen. So one of the interesting things that we've come across is when you have a data center lease, a co-location lease, and a data center is built up of, data halls or cages, depending on how many data halls or cages you have, it's like having 8 or 10 mini leases in a lease. They're all kind of separate contracts, right? They're treated very independently. So you have to look at them independently. And that even translates to lease classification. So you can have a single contract that has multiple data halls, and some of those can be classified as operating leases and some of those can actually be classified as finance leases. So that's
Mhm.
been something that we've seen. Very interesting and has its challenges, right? As you can imagine from
Yeah.
your experience, again, fitting that square peg into a round hole. And I think one of the things that's exciting is just in general AI technology and where the data centers are going. Look at like our forward looking statements in Q4 of last year. Larry Ellison talked about the concept of deploying like Oracle Cloud data centers in like unconventional locations like submarines and ships because we have the ability to build those data centers so small that they can fit into a ship and a
Hmm.
submarine. And that does align with like Oracle's vision, be flexible and scalable for their cloud infrastructure. Power's the new gold, right? And so,
Yeah.
very simplistically, all of that power generates heat, and there's a need for cooling solutions. And
Hmm.
so, there's an experiment out there. Oracle's not doing the experiment. We're talking about being able to put these in submarines, but putting these data centers underwater is fascinating to me in the deep ocean. It's a consistently cool environment, it's perfect for passive or direct cooling, and there's environmental benefits as well. That's a lower carbon emissions. So that's
Hmm.
the lease I wanna see. I wanna see that come across my desk. I want that vision to play out from our forward-looking station statements, and I wanna see a data center and a submarine lease come across my desk.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Who
So
wouldn't?
right? So that's fascinating, and then I'm sure you've watched the news and heard about Project Stargate. So that
Hmm.
was announced at the White House press conference, and I think it was January, and that's aimed at a $500 billion initiative for advancing AI across the United States. And it's a partnership with Oracle,
Hmm.
OpenAI, and SoftBank. And we are on the leasing side. So I have seen those leases. It's in Abilene, Texas, 10 buildings, and its power infrastructure is 1.2 gigawatts. That's a lot of power.
Mm.
And so, and again, those contracts are unique because of the data halls. They're treated differently. When do they come online? The commencement dates. So there's just a lot of variables, and again, how do you take the way these contracts are negotiated from a business perspective, trying to do what's best for the company in general, and again, fit everything into that ASC 842 bucket.
Absolutely. Yeah. That is interesting that you bring that up. A lot of people think, and this depends on who you talk to, of course,
Right.
but I just had a conversation this week where people were saying, well, why doesn't everybody just write their leases as short-term leases for less than 1 year? And then they don't have to worry about lease accounting rules because they can keep them off the balance sheet with the short-term exemption, right? But leases are not designed to make accounting easy, right?
Right.
Leases are designed to fit the needs of the business. And landlords don't want to build those types of facilities like you're talking about and only have a guaranteed income stream for 1 year, right? That's just not going
Right.
to happen. And it's not in the best interest of anybody. So I think you bring up a super good point there, right? You hear the old analogy of the tail wagging the dog, right? You're
Mhm.
not, we need to use our knowledge of accounting to account for the transactions that are best for the business,
Right.
not the other way around. And that's something that a lot of times people lose sight of if we stay in silos, right? If we just,
Mhm.
stay in our own departments and kind of look inward, it's easy to get in that line of thinking. But when we get out and we talk with different people, people like you, Phyllis, for me, well, I didn't know that there was a opportunity to lease a submarine data center. Uh, that's fascinating. And actually, believe it or not, we're in the second season of the podcast here, and this is not the first time that submarines have come up on the podcast. The first time was with Neil Ubeline, and he started his career in the Navy, and he was a nuclear submarine operator. And he actually, just like you did with your police officer experience, Neil related the lessons he learned in nuclear submarines in the Navy to what he does now in the real estate industry. So that's interesting. But I love the way that we get to deal with so many different and very interesting areas of the business in lease administration and lease accounting. We account for airplanes, fleets of airplanes,
Mhm.
real estate all over the world, all locations, even some under the sea, right? But
Mhm.
I mean, it's just a fascinating profession. And I want to just tie that into the career progression again one more time, right? With you having two open positions on your team, I did a search the other day. There are thousands of open positions in the US alone. I was just searching US. There are thousands of open positions that mention lease accounting or lease administration. And the work is so interesting. But like you mentioned, you don't go to college and get a degree in lease administration or lease accounting for that matter. I mean, you can get a degree in real estate, you can get a
Right.
degree in accounting, but then what a fascinating specialty to go into dealing with leases for one reason, right? There are many reasons, but for one reason, just all the interesting things that you come across.
100%. And when you were talking about negotiations, right? Like you don't negotiate your leases. And
Hmm.
I think there's still that component that the teams, whether it's your accountants, your lease administrators, they really educate your negotiators because you're right. They need to do what's best for the business in totality, right?
Hmm.
But some of that may be factoring in, some of the when you're talking about how you're doing your TIs, when you're taking possession, do you want early possession? Do you not want early possession? What is it for? I think having them understand that is really helpful so that as they're doing these negotiations, they can make the best decision that they can, for the business. But like you said, we couldn't all do exempt leases. You know how much we'd all be paying for our space if we were getting it on a year by year? I mean, it'd be
Yeah.
way more than what you're paying your lease administration team or your accountants to do the work. So, yeah, it would
Yeah.
become very cost prohibitive and you wouldn't have good continuity of business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, absolutely. You're right. And I'll bring up another podcast from season one, which was Alec Wynn. Alec is a real estate broker in Denver, and he closed the biggest deal of his career that he equates to winning a major in golf. He said it was life changing financially, but he won that big deal because he understood the impact of leasing and real estate on the financial statements. And he used that knowledge to associate relocating a corporate headquarters to earnings per share. And the only way he was able to do that was by educating himself on accounting. And he wrote a brief and presented it to the CEO. And the CEO said, okay, go. You have a green light to move our corporate headquarters, right? And,
Right.
but the way he did that as a real estate professional was understanding accounting. So you're exactly right. Yeah. the accounting shouldn't wag the dog, as I put it,
Right. Yeah.
but knowledge of what happens with accounting can certainly help you motivate some behavior.
Right. 100%. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
So let me ask you, Phyllis, we have only a short amount of time, unfortunately, but I do want to hear some about what you do with your free time because you told me earlier you'd get up at 4:30 in the morning. So what in the world are you doing at 4:30 in the morning?
So on top of this fascinating lease administration, lease accounting career that I have, my husband and I also operate a small farming operation in Northern California. So
Cool.
we're not as big as we used to be. I mean, our kids have kind of grown and moved on. But over the years, the things we've done are pasture raised poultry. So sending that to market, USDA and California Food and Agriculture certified. We do custom beef, which is you hear people, oh, I bought a half a cow, a quarter cow. So we do custom beef, but we also do USDA beef. And so it goes to a USDA facility and we're able to do cut ups. So we're able to sell your individual steaks, cuts of beef. And then we've done eggs over the years as well. At the highest point I had was about 400 chickens, 400 laying hens.
Wow.
And so again, leveraging technology to be able to do that and be efficient. So I did everything through an online farm store, and I had specific pickup times at the ranch. On the weekends, I'd give like a 2-hour window, and in the evenings, we'd package everything up for everybody. We have a little farm store that's on our property. And then I would do deliveries Friday afternoons between like 5 and 7:30. I would do deliveries to specific zip codes. So people would just get on the store, do all their pre-orders. My computer program would print everything out for me. We'd bundle everything up. People would show up. We'd hand it out to them. Very quick, very efficient. And then we do the same thing once a week for our deliveries.
Wow.
So that allowed us to be able to do that, again, leveraging that technology to do that. So something very rewarding too. The benefit we have is we know what we're eating. You have huge gardens over the years as well, both indoor hydroponic vegetable gardens and, outdoor gardens. And so we try and eat most of what we raise and grow.
Wow, cool.
Yeah.
Now, have your kids been involved in the farming operation?
Yes, they have. Some of them have gone on to careers. I've got one that just graduated from nursing school with her BSN. One of my daughters has actually moved into a house that we have here on the property. So she's going to come back and help with some of the farming stuff. My son, farming is really not his thing, but he is fantastic with all of our equipment. He's a diesel mechanic, so he helps us out there. And then my oldest daughter is a school teacher, but she still has 3 horses here. She's moved out, but she has 3 horses. And for years, when she was going through college, she supported herself by doing horseback riding lessons here.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Cool.
we're a
Well,
busy family. Yeah.
I can tell. What I'm reading between the lines there is that you have taught your kids a strong work ethic, and it sounds like they're well on their way in whatever they choose to do, as you have proved out in your career. I mean, it is interesting to see and hear about how you have been successful in vastly different areas, right? Farming, law enforcement, and real estate, lease administration, and lease accounting. Now finishing up your accounting degree, even, right? Lifelong learner
Yeah.
as well. So,
Right.
wow,
Yes.
kudos to you.
Thank you.
Well, Phyllis, thank you so much. Always a pleasure talking with you, and I look
Always,
forward to
yes.
seeing you at the NRTA conference down in Orlando.
Excited. Thanks, Matt. Thanks so much for having me on. It was great to chat with you today.
Thank you for listening to the Lease Alert. I'd be grateful if you would like and subscribe wherever you listen. Until next time, keep learning and leasing.